Our editorial mentions that as per the latest accidental deaths and suicides in India report of the NCRB, that's the National Crime Records Bureau report of 2024, there were 1,832 deaths classified under heat sunstroke category. The highest numbers were from Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Punjab and Jharkhand. In 2023, this number was 804. In 53 megacities, most deaths due to forces of nature, as the report mentions, were due to heat or sunstroke in 2024. The World Health Organization estimates the annual heat toll to be 480,000 lives, 45% of them in Asia, followed by 36% in Europe. The Climate Risk Index 2025, published by German Watch, ranks India as the sixth most affected country by climate change related extreme weather events from 1993 to 2022. So Shweta, I invite you to first, to answer my first question, which is that how is the extreme heat different this time, as every summer the temperatures seem to be breaking new records? Are we talking and doing enough on the heat question? Have we understood what the heat question is?
Thank you for Priyam inviting me here. I think it's a very important question as to have we understood the heat question well. Now each year we are hearing this discussion on the breaking records, right? Temperature soaring. But what is different this time, I feel, is there is greater conversation also about urban heating, and heat is now affecting people across sections. Earlier, it was largely in rural areas or in certain urban centers that it was being experienced in a very brutal manner. But now this is an all-India issue. In fact, you must have come across the data that 100 most hottest cities of the world are in India. So that tells us the scale of the problem, how big it is. You also pointed out the data on heat mortality. Now, the problem with this data is it is based on one source, NCRB data, and also it is 2024 data. But there are scientists who have worked on the heat mortality estimates in India, especially Ashok Gadgil's study, which says that a heat wave, if it lasts for more than 5 days, can lead to 3,400 extra deaths. If this heat wave lasts for over 5 weeks, then it can go up to 1 lakh. So our estimation is, we are underestimating how much deaths are happening because of heat. And it's precisely because of this, it is a different issue this time, because we are becoming aware that it is leading to large-scale mortality. And heat issue is not just about mortality, but also long-term morbidities. That is, it can cause long-term diseases, health disabilities, which of course affects the way you survive and your ability to earn, to make a living. It leads to financial loss as well. So there are deep structural issues that heat is going to cause. It is already causing a lot of distress in rural areas, which was always there even without a heat wave. But it is a planetary scale issue this time. And it's not just India which is being affected. I think even in Europe, there is a heat wave currently.
So just asking you about, then getting into the question of India, what do you think the government has done about this? Because there's something called the Heat Action Plan that the government has introduced, and it emphasizes, your editorial also emphasizes people's right to protective action during extreme heat. Can you tell us what these heat action plans are and which states seem to have implemented it? Also, in this context that we're speaking, what is weather literacy, and have there been any key limitations to this so far?
So when it comes to government action, I think the early heat action, when it was not called heat action plan, but just a basic preparedness to deal with heat crisis, was seen in the state of Odisha. Because in 1998, there was a severe heat crisis there, which led to a lot of deaths, around 2,000 within a short span of time. So the very next year, the government was prepared for this to deal with this crisis. They improved the public health preparedness, introduced cooling stations within the public health system, strengthened their ambulance network, had water cooling and drinking water resources everywhere. So this number from 2000, it came down to 90 in the immediate subsequent year. So, and also regulated the working hours. So this shows that if a concerted action is taken at a larger scale, we can certainly bring down the mortality rates. And the immediate action that needs to be taken is to bring down these mortality rates. So in the short term, heat action plans have worked, but they are not the solution for a longer term. The actual formal heat action plan was introduced in Ahmedabad in around 2010, when again, because of a heat wave, there was large number of deaths in the city. I think Ahmedabad is the first city in South Asia to come up with such a plan, which again has issues like regulation of work hours and cooling stations and things like these. A more comprehensive heat action plan is being developed now in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, where, One Health approach, weather literacy is being incorporated in it. Kerala's heat action plan is a far more comprehensive one also, because in 2018 itself, the government of Kerala made a legalized regulation of work hours for informal workers. Now, the informal and outdoor workers are the frontline victims of this kind of brutal heat. So it's extremely important to regulate their work hours. So Kerala government did this in 2018 through the Minimum Wages Act. This kind of legal backing is extremely important, because what we see is that these heat action plans are only operating at an advisory level. They are voluntary. And in India, when issues are voluntary and it concerns the masses, especially the poor, we see an open flouting of the rules. Even in today in Mumbai, you can see at peak hours construction activities going on. So a legal backing is a must. In fact, the gig workers and delivery workers are demanding a legal backing of these heat action advisories. They should not simply remain advisories. So Kerala also introduced another thing in monitoring of the UV ray index. South India is facing a very peculiar problem of high UV ray concentration, which has direct impact on your skin, vision, and also affects your organs. So it has serious health complication issues. So Kerala also has UV ray index monitoring stations, wherein the state is not simply relaying information of rise in temperature. It is also communicating that this rise in temperature is accompanied by so much levels of concentration of UV rays, which can directly impact your health. So when you internalize the message, you are also internalizing how much it can affect your body. So this is a minor but a very important shift in communication. It is not just about how you feel in relation to the weather, but how it is going to impact you directly. And this kind of communication shift is important. Otherwise, we do not become very conscious about how climate and environment directly affects our existence, at the level, at a physiological level. So, and Kerala also has introduced the school water bell system, wherein regular drinking water, alarms are raised. There is also weather monitoring system that is taught to children as a part of their weather literacy campaign. So there are these efforts being taken at local level, but it's very fragmented. We need a very strong national level plan for heat preparedness.
So there are, of course, other nations other than India who've also faced this problem and continue to face such problems. Are there examples from other countries that have faced heat-related deaths which could offer useful lessons for India, do you think?
Yes. In fact, the reason for heat action plan at national and UN level was because of the heat wave in Europe in 2003 that led to around 70,000 deaths in the continent. And France was particularly affected. So they have incorporated heat action within their national policy. wherein the built environment design of urban areas will be climate resilient. The cooling is not simply mechanized cooling, but also passive cooling. Drawing from urban planners, engineers, scientists, their insights into how we design the cities, more green areas, but in a scientific manner, not a very mechanical manner where you chop down trees for one development plan and then you mechanically plant somewhere else. It's not how it should be. Scientific forestry has to be, implemented. So in France and some other European countries, because they were severely affected in 2003, heat resilience architecture and urban planning is something that is central to their landscape now.
I see. You use this term in the editorial, which is democratizing cooling. What does that mean? What would like democratizing cooling or a right to cool look like at a policy and infrastructure level in India, both in terms of urban and rural settings? Beyond the law question, what is the kind of systems and public investments that are needed according to you? And why is it important to bring the climate question now more so into the framing of these policies?
By democratizing cooling, I mean that, cooling is a right for dignified living. Heat is is threatening our very existence. If you look at heat and heat as a burden and how it is shared, it is very disproportionately shared. People are working under extremely distressing situations, not just because of heat, but also because of heat generating work environments. For instance, within factories, the machinery heat also affects the workers, right? People working in the outdoors, the waste workers, they are exposed to prolonged heat. Agricultural laborers, farmers, they are exposed to high amount of heat. So at the household level, kitchens, these are high heat spaces. So heat as a burden is very disproportionately shared, and it is defining the contemporary and future inequality within India and as well as around the world. Therefore, if you look at the right to dignified living and just right to live in a very dignified manner is a right, universal right? And if the planet is heating up, then the way to reclaim this right is to cool it down. So how do you cool it? One is, of course, the mechanized cooling that we resort to, but problems with the air-conditioned cooling is it's very short-term. These devices themselves lead to a lot of emissions, and in the long run, they do not help in the cooling process of the planet. So democratized cooling is passive cooling. We have to think of cooling of not just our immediate homes, but also our surroundings, our environments, our neighborhoods, our cities. And at the planetary scale, this democratization of cooling can happen only when international bodies develop a democratic consensus over who has to cut down the emissions at a larger scale. So that's what I mean by democratization of cooling.
Just to repeat my question, which I also had like a sub question, what kind of systems and public investment do you think is needed into this, apart from the law?
I feel it's back to basics approach. And by basics, I mean, just look at rural India. Even without heat wave, people are living under extreme distress. In 21st century, no human being should be clamoring for water. People are stepping outside their homes to just get access to water. They are dying in the process of getting water. It leads to a high escalation of violence. It also has led to increased human-animal conflicts. Just last week in Chandrapur district in Maharashtra, which again is in the range of 40 to 47 degrees Celsius, 4 Adivasi women were killed by a tiger because they had gone for this summer harvesting inside the forest to get the specific leaves that they need for summers. So 4 women were attacked by the tiger, and the rescue team has informed that this could also be because of the heat waves, because tigers get distressed and wildlife gets distressed. Our river bodies and natural sources of water has disappeared. So they, of course, come to areas closer to the villages where there is human life and there are some remaining water bodies. And this escalates the human-animal conflict. So I feel if we just fix our basic infrastructural issues, water has to come to people rather than people move out in search of water, especially under brutal weather conditions. That itself will help cut down a lot of fatalities and also morbidities. Second is electricity. We need to have consistent electric supply across rural urban areas, also to enable a piped water supply, but also basic mechanical cooling that is needed. Third is housing. We need to have climate resilient housing, not just simply painting of roofs in color white, because that does help in bringing down the temperature, but that is not enough. We have somehow resigned ourselves to this idea that housing of the masses or poor can be small and compact, but we need to rethink that idea. I think right to spacious, well-ventilated housing is an important right for all. And this can also help in dealing with or adapting to the rising temperature. So these are three basic infrastructural: water, electricity, and housing. Fourth is also food security. If we have good public distribution systems that ensures that food grains are supplied door-to-door level, then this can also prevent unnecessary mobility in such extreme weather events. And at a large-scale environmental level, I think scientific forestry, scientific greening of urban spaces, not just aesthetic, but it has to be scientific, structural. That is something that can help mitigate this problem to a large extent.
Yeah. The editorial eventually asks us to reflect on our own capacity to tolerate indifference. In practical terms, what kinds of choices do you think us as individuals can make in our everyday life to ensure that others are not made more vulnerable to extreme heat? Like bringing the question from the system to the individual. Yeah. Yeah, Shweta, go on. Yeah.
See, first of all, we need to acknowledge that this is a planetary level crisis also. So we need efforts both from top to bottom as well as at the grassroots level. To address your question at individual level, what can we do? We have to make environment and climate central to our consciousness, both as a civil society, as a political society, in our politics, in our education, in our cultural discourse, in our media communication. How often do you hear people talking about weather-related crisis, or even rural agrarian crisis in the media? We are an agrarian country. Weather is so central to our living, day-to-day living, day-to-day production. But we hardly hear anything about weather except in this heat wave, because everyone is experiencing it. But when majority of rural agrarian India was experiencing this brutal weather, there was hardly any reporting about this issue. So we have to make environment and weather central to our communication and public discourse. We also need to ask our representatives as to what are they doing to cool down the planet, to make environment, both air pollution, water pollution, and this extreme heat. What are the steps that they are taking? Our electoral politics, unfortunately, is not very environment sensitive, but we have to make environment a central question of, our polity. We need to see how manifestos are addressing this. Media needs to ask how our political parties, what is their environmental vision for the country. So at the individual household level, if you are asking me, then we have to be conscious of labor that is exposed to heat. We have to see within our, housing societies, the security guards, the staff that works with the waste, the cleaning staff, they are exposed to heat for a long time. So we have to take efforts to minimize that effort. We have to look at our neighborhoods and see if we can, have citizens group that collaborates with the local MPs, MLAs to regulate the work hours of the construction workers. And there has to be a strict monitoring and implementation of these construction activities. At neighborhood level, we can take some action, although support from our political systems is essential. We can, in the long run, also demand from our MPs a dashboard of budget expenditure. That is, when they are spending money for development funds, how much of it is also allocated to environment-related issues. So these are some steps that we can take, but it's very important to acknowledge that this is a global scale issue, that all these individual, national, local level efforts can be fruitful only if they are met with equal action at the other end, that is at the global scale.
Right. Thank you, Shweta. I think that was the last question, and thank you for such a meaningful discussion on a very important topic. As we've discussed, the heat crisis remains both an immediate and demands both an immediate and a structural response. There's much to learn from the experiences across the world, but also an urgent need to address deep inequalities at home. Keeping the biosphere in mind, as Shweta reminded us, any meaningful response must move beyond the advisories to stronger legal protection and systemic support for our workers who are most exposed to heat. To further engage with Shweta's editorial, please visit the EPW website. It has the editorial available for free to access this week. And Shweta, in case you want to add anything else, please feel free to do that. Yeah, sorry. Before we finish.
I would like to add one point. Can I go
Yeah,
ahead?
yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
So in the course of researching for subject, I came across a very perceptive point by this writer called Jeff Goodell, and his book, heat is not a very visible, dramatic, destructive force like a tornado, hurricane, or flood, or a cloud burst, which is very physical and dramatic in its impact. Heat encroaches slowly, okay? And that's the reason we are not taking it as seriously as we must. Although the number of death toll and morbidities does show how visible is the impact, but because in its unfolding it is very different, it is very slow, it is very quiet, we are not taking heat as seriously as other forms of environmental disasters. So there are few states, I think Kerala and also Tamil Nadu, that has included heat as a part of state disaster, natural disaster. We need to acknowledge that heat is a natural disaster now, and it's high time we acknowledge it.
Right. It is. It's a question that requires us to look at the problem as a deep structural problem, which requires interventions in policy as well as on an individual level. So thank you, Shweta. That was very, very insightful. All of you must go to the EPW website and access our editorial. It is free to access this week. And please feel free to leave in your comments or any questions that you have for our editors. Please subscribe to Economic and Political Weekly. We shall be back with another Spaces episode soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shweta.